What happens when you take a perfect evolutionary monster that's also a hunting machine that survived the destruction of its planet, rode an asteroid into our planet, survived that impact, and then pin it against the squishy Earth bodies? Well, complete and absolute destruction of most ecosystems, and including in that, the destruction of our own society. And subsequently, A Quiet Place Part 2, when that comes out, which is actually confirmed, humanity has been knocked back on its heels, which is far better than any other animal. These perfect predators that touch down from space are merciless machines as they work through the planet, adapting and eradicating all life. However, what gives them this ability to survive these countermeasures, and how might humanity yet overcome this species? Well, let's discuss that in today's episode. So as per usual, I will put a timestamp up on screen if you would like to bypass the summary of the plot, but if not, I will get you up to speed. So let's drop into it. So first off, this movie is an absolute nightmare. If you don't know, A, I'm clumsy, 2, I snore, and D, I have tinnitus. To be absolutely quiet would be maddening, and I for sure would have been annihilated the first night after I fell asleep. But then again, I would have been spared from the constant noise, so I guess it could be worse. So what happens during the events of the movie though, now that I'm done complaining about the constant noise I hear? Well, nothing good. We start off in a store ironically in the year 2020, which, hold up, for real, this appears to be fall, and it's currently summer, and it only took 3 months, which means this likely takes place in July when the aliens first touch down. And based on this year already, this movie is a documentary of the future instead of just fiction. So, July Apocalypse expansion pack confirmed, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get to our own demise, during the course of this cursed year known as 2020, it's basically just a skeleton crew of humans left and the quietest of animals on the planet. The aliens that touch down have incredibly sensitive hearing, and as a result, anything that makes any noise is attacked and mutilated. Here we see a family attempting to scavenge supplies in a town long after its abandonment. While there, kids are being kids and totally not reading the room concerning the end of our species, and one, known as Bo, is drawn to a space shuttle toy. The dad takes it away for fear of it making noise, which was honestly a good move, but the daughter gives it back to the kid. Unbeknownst to the family, the kid puts the batteries back in while walking home, and the toy starts making space shuttle noises and alerts a nearby creature of the family's presence. The dad takes off to yeet the toy out of the kid's hand, but alas, the kid is yeeted instead. This apparent attack causes his instant end. Roughly a year later, Reagan, the daughter, continues to feel some serious guilt. While technically not her fault, it still sort of is her fault, but kids, what are you gonna do? While Lee continues to make radio contact with anyone else, or really, doesn't make radio contact with anyone else past his neighbors, it all really becomes a fruitless endeavor. Nobody is picking up the phone. All the while, however, he attempts to continue to work on the cochlear implants for his daughter in an effort to fix them. After his attempt to fix his daughter's hearing, they go to a river where we get the first major, so yeah, this family is already not too smart moment. While at the river, the father and son quietly talk after they drop a fish. The son tries to bolt, but the dad tells him it's safe because of how loud it is. Later, they go to the waterfall where the dad is able to yell, but they are still safe. So you can literally be next to water and are safe. So it really kind of turns out to be an interesting idea to live on a quiet farm then. While walking home, Lee and his son stumble across an old house that an elderly couple lived in. The old man is ready to check out, however, after finding his presumed wife's body. Lee signals for him to stay quiet, but the man is really kind of just done with this. He lets out a yell so that the monster will come back and take him out. And take him out it does. With a quick slice to the chest, considering what we see it do to a truck later, this quickly opens the rib cage and he meets his end. While away during this, the mother's water ends up breaking and she goes into labor. She heads down to the basement to flip on the lights to red to let Lee know that she has gone into labor, but steps on a nail and drops a glass frame as a result. This alerts a nearby creature to her presence and they enter the house. Arriving back to the house and seeing the lights, Lee discovers Evelyn in the bathroom after setting off the firework diversion. She has already given birth to the baby and she is hiding from the creature currently skulking around the area. They quickly make their way into the soundproof basement area they had already created, which again, if they have a soundproof basement, okay, anyways. Promising that he will actually go and protect the kids, Lee takes off to look for them and Evelyn falls asleep in the basement. Shortly after, however, she wakes up to discover it has been flooded and the creature has already found its way in. So then the kids almost die in a grain silo, which is a real thing if you didn't know. If you go into a grain silo, you sink. So don't ever do that. But interestingly, this is where we see another trait of this creature. As Reagan's cochlear implants let out a high-pitched frequency, it appears to injure the alien and cause it great discomfort. However, the reaction is not by chance. The aliens apparently have the ability to affect electrical activity in the area by an unknown means, but it could be by a known unknown means to me, so we'll cover that in a minute. At this point, the creature returns and attacks and wounds Lee. Marcus and Reagan hide in the truck, but after seeing his father wounded, Marcus shouts. This causes the creature to begin ripping apart the truck. Lee signals to the kids that, bro, it's cool now, but I gotta meet my end because, total dad move. I guess kids really will be the death of you. He yells and draws the monster away, which then attacks and ends him. With only the kids and mom left, they retreat down into the basement where the creature returns. At this point, Reagan has realized that the implant weakens the creature, or at minimum has some effect on it. She switches on her device and the creatures become painfully disorientated. Realizing that this is actually what's causing it, she then puts it up to a speaker and amplifies it. And this causes the face to open up, exposing the soft, fleshy, gooey goodness that's known as the inside of its head. Evelyn takes it out with a boomstick, and upon doing so, two creatures hear the noise, which is to be expected considering they can hear from miles away. So the family arms itself with a newfound way to actually fight back. So now that we are all caught up, what a wild ride. This movie is interesting to say the least, but there are some serious plot holes and downfalls. I mean, if humanity only had spears at our disposal, I would probably be inclined to believe this is possible, but we literally have armor-piercing rounds. But we'll kind of cover that, but let's first get to the biology, and then we can tear apart the premise here. The size of this creature is actually not that much taller than a human. It stands roughly 6 to 7 feet tall, or about 2 to 2.3 meters tall, and due to its emaciation, I wouldn't put this thing over about 300 pounds. It's a marginally humanoid creature that looks mildly emaciated to boot. They are stated to be an evolutionarily perfect animal, and this means they're able to adapt to any environment, no matter the atmosphere composition or lack thereof, temperature, presence or absence of light. It really doesn't matter. They can exist and thrive in any condition. The aliens do not possess eyes to hunt, but instead hunt by sound. The large ears they do possess under the armor allows them to interpret the clicking noise that they emit, so I would have to assume this is probably a form of echolocation, meaning that they can somewhat see their surroundings and can find you if you don't stay still as well. On their exterior, they possess impenetrable armor. This chitinous material appears to be about a third to maybe even a half-inch thick and is apparently immune to all forms of penetrative countermeasures. Because of this, they fear no animal on Earth. This armor can also be shaped. On the front limbs of this beast are claws several inches in length, which is able to rip apart humans like tissue paper as well as trucks from what we have seen. This armor also acts as a tremendously strong barrier to the outside. Considering they come from a different planet and are basically just space herpes for worlds, they would need to survive the confines of deep space. And they are able to do this, and in turn, survive an impact onto a planet. This barrier also protects from extreme heat and cold. Internally, this creature is massively powerful and insanely quick, able to traverse miles in a matter of minutes and destroy vehicles as well as grain silos. These beasts are able to easily overpower defenders and attackers alike. Also concerning internal metabolism, it appears as though they don't have a need for energy in a traditional sense, which again is just kind of one of the most dumb things I've ever said, but like I said, we'll get to that. Instead, these creatures are able to hunt much better than anything on Earth, but with that said, they do not eat their prey. Instead, they mutilate them and leave them. So starting with the feet, we see that this creature has a stump-like appendage, appearing less like a specialized land organ and more like an afterthought, which may explain everything later. The structuring of the leg, however, is much like that of the predators on Earth, digitigrade and able to support their weight appropriately. Moving up to the hips, we see that it has a pelvis much like a human. Moving further up, nothing is too notable concerning the chest or abdomen except for its overall emaciated look and armor plating. Flanking either side of the chest are two large front limbs. These limbs serve as the main offensive lever. Much like animals on this planet, this creature has an elbow and a wrist. However, the actual carpal bones are much more elongated and the phalanges are tipped with chitinous claws several inches in length. Again, these will be completely adequate at slicing open anyone who makes any noise. Moving up to the head, we see that the only vulnerability that it has or that we know of is the overlapping chitinous plates. When trying to listen, these will open up, revealing the face underneath. Here we see jagged teeth in all directions, several inches in length. No eyes are present, but on either side are large fleshy ears meant to take in information and hone to its location. So we need to discuss internally what is going on with this thing. As we know, this creature does not eat prey. It simply hunts and destroys it. So is it really hunting at all? Well, based on its complete lack of nutritional intake from humans, as made mention by the people who created this thing, it appears to be a territorial creature more so than a hungry one. This would mean that internally this creature must have something at its disposal, and I believe that to be its own means of energy production without the need for outside consumption. And this also is made known by the fact that when these aliens first came across on the asteroid that hit Earth, that would have taken millennia and probably longer than that to actually get here. All the while, the few on the chunk of rock would not have likely been eating one another or anything else. However, because of this distance, it isn't likely they're receiving energy from light type of deal. First, because being in the cold, dark recesses of space indicates that there is very little light, if any at all. Second, because of the actual pathophysiology of these creatures. Because they don't have eyes, their evolution on their original planet was likely well past the habitable zone of their star, or at least what's considered habitable for humanity. Their ability to resist extreme temperatures and their lack of eyes would indicate, at least to me, that they were presumably like confined to a moon or planet further out from their parent star. This planet or moon would likely have been frozen at the surface with water, but due to the internal temperature of the planet, it's likely allowed for water to be liquid further down. In fact, I believe one of the moons of Saturn, is it Io? It might be Io. Anyways, this moon is presumed to have water that's liquid underneath the surface, but it's going to be straight up pitch black down there. But that's kind of why I theorize this. Again, with no eyes, this would indicate that darkness is how their evolutionary traits would arise. Visible light is something that a species and life form in general would take advantage of. Instead, due to their frozen world, sense of sound would be preferable. Now, sound works above and below water. In fact, it does travel faster and further in water, but it still works in air as well. These creatures would likely have evolved in the dark, frigid waters of their world, and I'm just working with what they gave me, but they could likely come up to the surface, say if it was in an elliptical orbit around their sun. So an elliptical orbit may thaw out the planet at some point during its revolution around the sun. We can see the results of this as they have the ability to run on land and are quite effective at it. However, where they really shine in their ability is to swim. It is known that after landing in Mexico, North and South America were hit the hardest first, but shortly after that, these creatures spread throughout the ocean and began making landfall in other areas and taking over the local population. We also see how seamlessly this creature slips into the water in the basement and maneuvers around without disturbing the surface. Another reason why I believe this creature was from the depths of the ocean and hunting more out of territory than sustenance is once again its metabolism. We know deep down in our own oceans there are hydrothermal vents. Here organisms are able to live without sunlight or food and instead use chemicals coming from the vents for this food. Likely these creatures from space would do the same, or even still may have some unknown method of eating, because during their stints up on land, I don't think hydrothermal vents are that present, and they're definitely not present on our planet concerning on continents. Another trait that appears to be otherworldly but actually rooted in reality is this creature's ability to be affected by high frequency and electrical signals. First, the high frequencies can damage the creature's hearing, sort of like a person getting flashbanged. This will send them reeling backwards and ultimately knock them unconscious, likely due to a runaway amplification within its perception organ. And that sounds weird, but have you ever been sitting there just minding your own business and then your ear goes really quiet and then it just does this weird E noise for like 30 seconds? That is essentially a self-replicating signal within the hair cells within your ears, and then your body gets it under control about 30 seconds later. So it can be assumed, at least with the hearing of these aliens, that maybe they don't have the ability to get that noise under control at certain frequencies. And the electrical interference may seem weird, but actually there are creatures that have that on this earth. First, we see that electric eels, and that's pretty much the standard, their ability to generate electricity could have an impact on the field around them, but more importantly, and probably more likely, is like how the sharks have the ability to perceive electric signals. This organ is known as the ampullae of Lorenzini. These tissues are electroreceptors and can help them detect electrical fields around them. That sounds odd, but it's actually not, because when muscles work, they generate small electrical fields, and that's how sharks can find prey. So it would appear that the aliens may have a version of this, except way beefier. The electric field they look for may have likely been from a larger animal on their planet, and as a result, the small electrical fields of humans go unnoticed. But this field the alien puts out is able to affect the conduction of electricity within the house at certain points, causing the lights to flicker on and off. So here we have a creature with impenetrable armor, doesn't need to eat, appears to not be able to breathe, can resist temperature variance that would drop a human, can detect from miles away just by sound, and appears to be straight up unstoppable. All this led to every military within 3 months completely giving up trying to destroy these things, and in turn, this led to the collapse of society and likely bunkers being flooded. And here's why I think this is absolute nonsense. First, good lord, the biological plot holes. So let's discuss armor for a second. Chitin is a naturally occurring material grown by biological organisms. The issue with that is, however, too much and the creature is stiff. Too little and it's brittle. Somehow these creatures are immune to all forms of countermeasures. So just good lord, no. Let's discuss what a 50 cal actually does. An armor-piercing round can literally punch through a 1.3 inch thick of solid steel. On top of this, it has the added effect of compression waves which liquefy muscle, bone, skin, whatever. That much force imparted into this creature over chitin only being, what, maybe a third of an inch thick, means that the compressional wave is still being imparted into the body, meaning that each hit is creating a bubble on the other side of that armor, even if it doesn't punch through, destroying that area of the body. And this is why even if you're wearing a, like if you're a cop, right, and you're wearing like a resistant vest, you still get bruises on the other side because that energy is still hitting. So there's the first issue. Countermeasures would absolutely work. work. Second, I'm just spitballing here, but what about a freaking tank? You're telling me that a tank round, a thing literally designed to destroy armor and pierce it, can't punch through chitin? Spent uranium, as far as I know, is one of the strongest armors that I think humanity knows of so far. It could be stronger now. It's been a couple years. So unless this creature is quite literally packing armor made outside of the knowledge of the periodic table, which seems unlikely, then a tank round would punch through these things with ease. Not to mention, it's a tank. Drive over it, spin the tracks, mincemeat. And these things, yeah, they're powerful, but they're not getting in a tank. Or hey, even third option, why would you not place a boombox out in the open or hover a drone and then like literally attract every creature within a few mile radius and then just detonate something you know for sure has the compressional wave to liquefy past armor? Look, all I'm saying is I don't care if it's an alien or a perfect evolutionary machine. At the end of the day, its body, just like ours, is nothing but a chemical reaction that needs to remain ongoing for survival. If this wasn't the case, then being shot in the face from the mother at the end would have done nothing because its body would remain functional. But it destroyed it, which means it must play by the rules of life, and no biological creature is going to resist everything and more than what the literal military can throw at it. I remember watching this in theaters and thinking, why didn't they just sort of like just make this thing a god? Because this creature has a glaring weakness to it. If it can be taken out by one shot and yet it's able to resist everything just because it folds in its face, like no. So this is an invasive species. Eradication from Earth is likely not possible based on its ability to hunt in the oceans, but safe zones could nevertheless be created quite easily, and unless we were fighting this thing with swords and axes, technology trumps nature in most respects. But I also want to talk about this creature in general. I don't get it. Everything about its evolution and ability doesn't make any sense from an understood science perspective. If a creature doesn't need to eat, why have teeth? Defense, right? Well, its defenses are basically impenetrable. So again, why have teeth? Territory, right? Well, if it's defending territory, why do they seem to move on both land and water? Surely their food source is likely in one location over the other. But then if they don't need to eat, there's no point in keeping territory. And if you don't need to hunt, why are the organs so fine-tuned for literal hunting? The argument can be made that maybe this creature doesn't find humans edible, but it's stated that they only possess animal intelligence. So still, when they take out another animal, surely they would chow down, but they don't. But there is something known in nature as the good enough feature. A way to think about this is, why in the name of all that is holy are human breathing tubes connected to the food tube, which means we can choke? Well, it's because nature deemed it good enough. These creatures don't appear to fall in this category as good enough. It almost appears as though these traits were handpicked and bred by something else, because all of this coming together appears way more plotted and planned than by random chance. Because is anybody really going to sit here and tell me all of these factors with it were designed by nature? Because this is way too great to be just good enough. But who knows? Maybe we'll see in A Quiet Place 2 the quest to seal up plot holes.